So today we're here in downtown LA with Zach, CEO, co-founder, investor in Sanctuary Fitness. Is that right?
You got it. All the above.
And you're next door to a brewery. So was that part of the plan as well?
That was absolutely part of the plan. In all seriousness, whenever I was thinking about where would I want to open, I wanted a social element.
Right.
And I thought, man, it'd be great to be next to a brewery.
Yeah.
And then when I found this space that was available, it just kind of fell into place that we happened to be right next to a brewery, so it worked out.
Yeah. And tell us the story about the hole in the wall.
Oh yeah, so all these old buildings in downtown LA, they're old warehouse buildings, manufacturing buildings that are decades old. They had, I guess, pass-through holes in all of these walls. We're talking big holes. Where they would probably ship materials and products back and forth from, one assembly line to another. So we had a big hole in the wall between us and the brewery, and we had to sadly go ahead and close that up. So now we have to walk around and go in, the front door.
Okay.
But yeah.
It'd be nice finishing a class and sort of having, instead of lining up your milkshakes, you've got a beer lined up there or something.
We tend to do that from time to time.
Yeah. So just take us back. Where did you grow up? Were you from LA originally, or?
From Houston, Texas.
Okay.
Actually, a small town called Pearland.
Right.
Just right outside of the city.
Yeah.
And grew up as probably about 20 to 25,000 people.
Right.
When I grew up, it was a little smaller.
Yeah.
But I moved out here after undergraduate.
Right.
So after school in college, and did graduate school out here, and so that I've been out ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it like where you grew up then? Was there much sort of fitness around in?
Everyone played sports.
Okay.
It's Texas.
Right.
So football's big, baseball's big, basketball's big. Everyone grew up, for the most part, joining some type of sports team as a child.
Right.
Right. So for me, sports was always a part of my life. I
Right.
played sports in college.
Yeah.
And so fitness, I guess, was more about getting out there, playing some type of a game with your neighbors, your friends, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was your sort of main sport then?
For me, football.
Yeah.
I did them
Is
all.
that just on? When you say football, is that like real football?
We're talking American football. Yes, I'm aware of the confusion from time to time, but American football and baseball.
Right. Okay.
Were my main sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what at school? What was your sort of what was the things that you were interested? Was it from a sort of young age? Did you sort of feel as though you knew your way in life, or were you?
No, I mean, gosh. I was an interesting kid where I played all these sports, but I was in a lot of the advanced classes as well. So I was a nerd.
Right.
Big glasses.
Oh, really?
And all. Oh yeah. But I just happened to be good at sports.
Okay.
And so kind of growing up, I had my one foot was team captain of the sports teams. The other foot was, in kind of the advanced classes, honor society. I was in choir.
All right.
Like so there was kind of two different sides to me, I guess, growing up.
Yeah. So when you were leaving, and I know from England, your sort of school systems is a little bit different. But when you sort of left school, did you want to go on to university, or was that always the plan?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was a highly ranked athlete.
Right.
In baseball, and so I had scholarships.
Okay.
To go to different colleges, and I wanted to be a doctor at the time. So I chose a school that had a good pre-medical program to go play baseball in college.
Right.
Got there, ended up.
And that was in Texas still?
That was back in Texas.
Right. Okay.
That was back in Texas, and ended up not really enjoying the major, right? And then kind of had an injury, went through the rehab process and realized, wow, this is pretty cool, the way you can help people get their mobility back, get their essentially life back after an injury.
Right.
So then I wanted to go the route of becoming a physical therapist.
Right.
But I had a mentor who told me, go get a business degree
Right.
in case you ever open your own, place to become a physical therapist, you can run your own business. So I moved out here, went to business school, ended up going the corporate route, never went back to PT school. But I guess here I am now helping people find their mobility, helping people find their strength in a physical fitness related way.
Yeah. So just in those middle bits then, just so I catch on, so you decided not to be a doctor, is that right?
Correct.
And then, so you came out here to business school, was it?
I did.
In LA?
I did.
Where did you go? Where did you do that?
UC Irvine,
Right, okay.
down in Orange County, near
Right.
where you live now,
Yeah.
right? I went to business school there, did my MBA.
Right.
And then worked different corporate jobs.
So what was your first one when you left then? Did you have a part? Did you know I want to go to work for this type of company, or?
I was just trying to get a job.
Really?
It was 2008.
Right,
There was
okay.
kind of some things going on in the corporate world and the world economy in general, where you were just happy to have a job.
Right.
So I didn't necessarily have a path, and I think that's partly why I enjoyed business school as well, because I was being exposed to different ideas and thoughts and processes as far as how a business operates, works, runs, how the world operates as well. And so I got to travel a little bit. It was giving me more of an idea of what do I want to do? What industry would I want to be in?
Right.
I happened to be in consumer products
Right.
at the time, and that was where I kind of stayed.
So when you got your degree, you went into a consumer products company.
Correct.
What was that doing?
Vitamins and supplements company.
Okay.
So I was more on the manufacturing, the operational side as an analyst.
Right.
Then moved my way up to a project manager, as I had gone from one company to the next.
Right.
Still consumer products. This one happened to be Tesco owned and operated,
really?
actually.
Yeah.
So it was Fresh and Easy.
Okay.
Was the division out here in the U.S.
Right.
So I was an analyst for them. And then I was a project manager for Beachbody,
Right.
which does like P90X, Insanity. So I worked on the corporate side.
Right.
So I've always been around, I guess, healthy food and fitness related products in the corporate world.
Yeah. And with what you got when you did your MBA then, how valuable was that in terms of your career and what I guess what you're doing now? What's your sort of views on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because those are not cheap. Those are expensive to go get that degree.
Yeah.
And I would say it can open doors for you.
Right.
Right. It can get you the interview.
Yeah.
Essentially, but if you're not really locked into what you want to do, you may be getting an MBA and focusing on certain subjects that don't really add value to what you're trying to do.
Right.
And like I can point out certain courses during the MBA program that I'm like, those added a lot of value.
Yeah.
There's others that it's kind of like, I had to take these, but for what I'm doing, they didn't necessarily add value for me.
Right.
It just depends, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's different, but I would say either A, you're trying to become an entrepreneur, makes sense, go for it, learn about a lot of different things in a business standpoint, or if you know a particular industry you're trying to go into, then you're going to get an MBA, but you're going to have a focus on certain aspects.
Right.
If you're in finance, or if you're in real estate, or if you're in marketing, things like that.
Yeah. So how many years were you doing the corporate side then?
Corporate world for me was up until January of this year.
Oh, right. Okay.
Actually. So
And
that
how long
would
has this been open?
since January of this year.
Right. So this is
So that would have been about 10 years.
10 years.
About
right.
10 years.
So when did you get the sort of urge to think that you wanted to leave what would be, I don't know whether, some people say it's safe working for someone, and then I guess other people say completely the opposite because you're not in control, I suppose. How did you feel about that decision to?
It felt safe at first, right? You know, you do everything you're supposed to do. You do undergrad. You get a job. You work hard. You go to graduate school. You get a master's degree. Again, you kind of start to move up. But there were layoffs at the company I was working at, and they kind of came out of nowhere, and there was a lot of us that got laid off, and it was kind of a shock to the system where you're like, I'm doing a good job, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but someone else has made some decisions that mistakes were made, or just for whatever reason the decisions didn't bear fruit, and therefore, I'm on the chopping block. And so you do feel that you don't have a sense of control. There's an illusion, I think, that you have control, but at the end of the day, you're always going to be at the mercy of how well the decision makers are making decisions above you.
Right.
And that was weird for me because I could see some of that coming, but I wasn't in a place to really say or affect any change in a positive way in a large organization.
Right.
So for me, I thought, boy, I need to think about this. Do I want to go back into this? Was I really happy? Did I feel like I was really contributing everything I could contribute, or was I stuck in a box? So for me, the answers were, no, I really wasn't that happy. No, I don't think I'm contributing everything I can. And yeah, I felt kind of stuck in a box. So what would I do? I'd start a business, start a consulting firm. What would I try to do? And so I thought, it'd be nice to try to start a business. It's a challenge. Why not? Let's give it a shot.
And when you made that decision, were you already thinking about some sort of fitness boutique space, or was it a plain piece of paper to say, well, what, if you were going to start one, where do you do supplements, do you do food, do you?
Right.
What?
It was, I didn't know.
You didn't know?
It was more of a, I need to do something different.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Yeah.
I personally fell in love with a lot of my marketing and strategy courses in my MBA program. So I thought, whatever type of thing I want to do, I need to be able to incorporate a brand and marketing and things like that into this. And it just so happened, kind of what got me into the fitness thing was, while I was unemployed, it's really stressful, and it's a weird place to be sometimes.
How long were you?
10 months.
Oh, right.
Because I was stubborn, and I was like, I'm gonna go get a marketing job, right? I'm gonna get a marketing job. I have a master's degree with a focus in marketing and strategy. I don't necessarily want to do the operations thing anymore. I want to do marketing and brand-centric work. So the idealist in me says, someone's going to give me a shot at that, but it was always, you don't have experience, you don't have experience, you don't have experience. So a lot of closed doors. In the meantime, so my happy place, my sanctuary, if you will, was going and working out.
Okay.
I could unplug, I could spend 60 minutes, 90 minutes, just letting out any stress or frustration, feeling productive because I was doing something for myself. Right. And you can see the results of your work, right, over time. And so I started to get bored with just regular gym workouts, right, bench press and squats and all that, yay. But it just got boring. And so I thought, well, let me go try out some of these group fitness things that I've been hearing about, right? And this is 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And so I went and tried out CrossFit. I'm a college athlete, right? I was a college athlete, and CrossFit for me was a bit much.
Really?
It was a bit much. And
what, just intense, or?
It was intense, and there was a lot of peer pressure. I could see that a little bit. And for me, it was, a lot of things are just unnecessary. It's like, I don't really need to be able to push that much weight anymore because I'm not training for a sporting event, I'm just trying to be healthy. I don't want to potentially tear up my rotator cuff You know, I've been through injury rehabs before. I don't want to do it again. So that was a little much for me. And then, you know, I tried some of the cycling stuff. Some of it's a little too much dancey for me, which is fine. I just didn't feel like I was getting the greatest workout. You know, I tried different things.
And was all this with an end in mind that maybe this is a business that you're going to go into?
No, so that's what's crazy about it. I was just doing this to work out and do something different.
Right.
But what I realized is I wasn't real happy with all the offerings that were out there. There was just little things that I was like, if only they did this, or if only they did that, then I feel like it'd be great. Or this one's really great, but could it be in a little bit nicer setting, you know, a little bit higher end? So there was just different things. And that's when I kind of realized, back in one of my marketing classes, we talked a lot about the gap. Right. And the opportunity is in the gap.
And what do you mean by, what does that mean?
The gap is the current offering versus what you really want.
Right.
You know, a lot of times you design a product and the product is more about something that you could easily design and sell. You don't really know whether the things, the bells and whistles of your product are actually what consumers want.
Right.
Right? And so sometimes you have to understand what's the gap between what we've put together and created versus what the consumer actually values.
Right.
And so for me, I felt like I had my own little test case of myself of what do I value?
Right.
What do I really want? What's missing? What's the gap? What's missing in the marketplace? And then I thought, well, there might be more like me, so maybe I figure out a way to try to create something that is more what I would have wanted to have in a studio if I could just, you know, create one out of thin air.
Yeah. So it was very much a personal. You identified there was something personally that you felt was missing in the market.
I did, and I talked to friends too.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that what I was seeing was what other people were seeing. So I would ask questions, and they had no idea why.
Yeah.
It was more, oh, how do you like where you work out? What do you do? You know, things like that. What do you wish they had?
Right.
People will tell you, and so I was able to kind of make sure and cross-reference what I thought versus what they thought, and find kind of this middle ground of what people were looking for.
Yeah. And just on that, just going slightly off to the side for a moment, but how do you then, or how did you go through that process? Because there's a lot of ideas that are out there that are great ideas. You know, certainly in what we do, we get people send us products and some great ideas all the time, but sometimes there's a link in between timing of that idea and people being ready in the right, because you know, if you probably did this in certain cities, maybe even in North America, that the timing might be too soon.
Oh yeah.
You know, how do you feel about that?
You're right. Timing is hard to predict sometimes, and you have to be mindful of the marketplace. You have to be mindful of who's there, what are they currently doing, what might they do that isn't being done.
Right.
And some of that's just talking to people, and not giving everything away, but just, what if there was a place that did this? You know, that would be kind of cool.
Right.
And people will be like, oh, well, explain that to me, and then you know they don't get it. Or it's, you know what, yeah, that sounds great, actually. I would do that. That's pretty cool. I wonder why no one's done that.
Right.
So that can give you some general feedback. I also think, because for me, this concept was a little different. Over time, it morphed a bit.
Right.
And maybe at some point in the future, I'll add some of those other elements that, to me, makes it the full vision. But time, again, comes into play where you realize some things in the grand vision that you have, they're going to take forever. And you'll never actually get open, you'll never launch.
Right, okay.
If you try to make it the most perfect thing ever on day one.
And is that something that you'd learned from doing this? Because I hear that quite a bit as well.
Absolutely.
Sort of
Absolutely.
perfection
Yes, 100%. And that comes into play with complexity as well, right? You get it in your own head, but you're going to have to make sure everyone else gets it. And you've been thinking about this for how long? And everyone else is just seeing this for the first time, and you're going to expect your entire staff and all of the people you're trying to market to understand the complexities of what it is that you want this thing to be, that's a bad idea, right? People they're not gonna take that much time to try to understand everything. If you can make it seem simple on the surface,
right,
with all the complexity in the background that you and a handful of people are kind of managing, that's the key. And then you can add an additional layer over time. Once you've kind of mastered and have certain things on autopilot, then you can add something, right? Like we want to do data tracking at some point, right? I've got a data tracker installed. We don't use it yet because we're trying to make sure everyone knows just our basics.
Right.
Once everyone knows our basics, once we're confident with what we're doing on a daily basis, then we can look into that technology piece. Then we can start to incorporate it.
Right.
But trying to do it all at the beginning would have been a disaster.
It
was.
Okay.
And then there just comes a point where you realize, yeah, that can wait. We can operate without that.
Right.
We can do that in the future.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so you've been off work for 10 months, which is, I guess, financially, unless you.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about it, but it sounds like it's quite difficult. How did you then go from being out of work then to, you told me the cost of just the air conditioning alone in this place.
Yeah.
How did you sort of think about getting money together to do something? Because it's a dream for a lot of people to do this, but
it's expensive.
The money part.
I mean, if you're gonna do it right, then you're gonna pay.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. You can get crappy equipment, and you can pay, cheap money for it. Or
did you consider doing that?
To a degree, I thought about it, but I remembered back to when I went to certain places, and that was the deterrent for me was, this stuff just doesn't perform to the level that I would appreciate. And I was spoiled in college, right? I went to a big university and was an athlete, so I was used to nicer stuff. So it's just the truth.
Yeah.
But for me, I knew, no, I want nice equipment. I want this to be a good experience. Ultimately, this is an experience.
Yeah.
It really is. And so it needs to take that into consideration that the equipment is part of the experience. The facility, right? The flooring, the layout, the aesthetic, the air conditioning, the lighting, your staff, how well you pay them, right? The quality of the folks you're going to have running your business comes into play.
Yeah.
So all of these things are more expensive, you're right. And I didn't come from money, I didn't have money. And so it was how do I sell this vision to an investor to understand, A, it's different, why is it different? B, it actually has a good business model and revenue and expense plan behind it that's been vetted fully. And then, C, there's the ability to expand this, right? We can replicate this.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to get more of an ear from an investor, right? And so for me, it was just knocking on any door possible.
So did you do the financial plan yourself?
I did.
Yeah.
So that was, for me, the background as an analyst.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And being really good in Excel, understanding how to put together models, and then kind of having that business school background was really helpful.
Yeah.
It didn't fill in all the gaps, by the way. There were still a lot of things that you just don't learn.
No.
You just don't learn in school. And so you'll go into a meeting with an investor and they'll ask you questions that you hadn't thought of yet and you just don't have the answer for. And you have to make something up. And then you say, let me get back to you on that one. I've got this other data that I didn't bring with me. Things like that, and you've got to go and find it.
And with this kind of business being very new, like if it was a big box, my guess is that there's enough people that have worked for enough companies you can get it.
Right.
But there's probably not many, and the people who do know it are not going to be that open to share it. So where did you pull those numbers together then?
Yeah, that you're absolutely right, actually. People are not necessarily going to share, and most of all these businesses are private.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot out there. What I could do was look and dig and grab as much information as I could. There are a couple that have been bought by private equity firms.
Right.
And I could work backwards from what they paid to how many studios they have, what was their multiple, how much revenue was each studio averaging, how many class times do they have each day, how many people can fit in that class, what are they charging per head, to try to understand a little bit about that, right? It was a very involved, guesstimation, but as I found out, I was pretty accurate.
Right.
And then there was questions, right? You just play dumb.
Yeah.
I just asked questions of different instructors that I knew, or studio managers, or personal trainers, whatever it was. Hey, have you worked here? Oh, yeah. Oh, what'd they pay? Like little things. You can start to get that information.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And it's not a Google search.
No.
It's not there.
No.
But it's relationships. You can start to get that information from people if you have relationships.
So because we meet lots of business owners, trainers that want to come into this, and it's, from what you're saying, it sounds like it was a big part of this was the number side. How much of this is a passion and a wanting to come up with a great exercise experience against, this is a pretty tight business model that you've built from that base upwards and then layered the exercise, etc. on it. How would you describe it?
So for me, I wouldn't have done this if there wasn't a passion element. Being behind a desk for years and years and years just had started to drain me and take a toll on me, and I am more of a people person. I enjoy genuine connection. Really, for me, I've always enjoyed encouraging people, seeing them grow, helping them to realize that they can do more than they think they can do, which is one of the things I like to tell people here. And there's a way that you physically work out and realize that you can do more, and it gives you a confidence boost to go out and attempt to do more in your normal life.
Right.
So there's a mental element that comes from the physical, and that was something that sports always did for me, and same thing for working out and fitness. And so I thought, when I was trying to figure out what do I want to do from a business standpoint, it was a people-based business.
Okay.
I wanted to do something service.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something that encouraged and empowered, and I enjoy teaching.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, this fitness thing kind of, for me, fits all of that into one.
Right.
So the passion's there, right? And being able to sell a vision of what something's supposed to be, if you don't have a passion side of it, if it's just money, if it's just the dollars and the cents, it's not gonna work. People just aren't gonna get excited about it. They're just not. And so ultimately you have to have that passion side.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to explain why you're doing this, because that speaks a lot to your culture and your heart of who you are, which is what people will gravitate towards.
Yeah.
But you're not going to operate, you're not going to raise money, you're not going to open your doors, and you're not going to keep them open for very long if you don't have a handle on all of the business stuff, all of the finance, all of the marketing, customer relations, the systems that have to be in place to make things smooth, training people, finding people, hiring people. Are they the right fit for your culture? Do you understand your culture? So there's a lot of things that come into play.
Yeah.
So the passion was there first, but for passion to become reality, and actually a sustainable reality, all of that other stuff was a must.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you took me through earlier, you kind of explained about the thing that tended to stand out is the number of the people that you've got in here as well. And I suppose for trainers who are thinking like you are, is getting the numbers, the people, the space, is that a key part for this all to come together? Obviously there is the other parts, the passion, the training, etc. But getting, because I guess from a distance it looks fairly straightforward. Well, you get a warehouse, you do it up, get a passionate trainer, and we've got a business. But hearing you, it's just things that you just dropped into conversation. There's a lot of there's a lot of thought going into exactly where things are and how much space the person's got and how people can get in it.
Oh yeah. For me, I know every square inch of this place. It's just you have to be that way. You have to understand how it's working. You have to understand. I've worked every position as well, right?
Right.
You have to know how to fold the towels. Like you have to know what questions people ask when they come and check in at the front desk, right? Or they're here for the first time, or how do you handle these types of situations? Because someone's going to ask you, right? Hey, how should I do this? And if you don't have an answer, that's not good. But you're not going to know all those answers unless you think about it, analyze it, go observe existing businesses, put together your own thoughts, your own plans. But yeah, there's a lot more to this than I know how to train people and I can get some nice equipment and get some flooring. It really is a lot more than that because people want a seamless experience. They want things to be really smooth. And as far as being able to book, show up, I want to know exactly what you do. I want to know why. And essentially, why should I spend my money here versus somewhere else?
Yeah.
And all of those things come together where you need to, even to create the right pricing model, if you don't have a very solid idea of what your expenses are, fixed and variable, then you may not be pricing things right to cover your costs, or you may be pricing yourself out where you may think you need to price super high when really your model actually allows you to bring that down, which would increase your volume, which would increase, the amount of profit. So there's a lot that comes into play that if all you want to do is focus on actual teaching and not necessarily branding and not necessarily tech systems and not necessarily marketing and not finance and all that, you need to partner up. You need to go find some people that they can focus on that, if that's not your strength.
Yeah.
But you have to have it, or you're going to be operating blind, really.
Right.
It's like I've got a really nice car or a nice jet, but I don't have any guidance systems, and I'm just kind of flying. I'm in the air, like I'm flying. But do I have a direction I'm actually going? Do I actually know how to get there? Do I have a course plotted? You can fly all day, but is it really that productive if you don't really know how to get where you want to go?
Yeah.
Right?
Right, okay. And so coming back to the investment part then, was that, did you find a good partner and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like an easy thing to go and raise a lot of money with an idea that, someone who's never done it before and
not from the industry.
And not from the industry.
Yeah. It was a challenge. I first started trying to partner up with different fitness instructors, right?
Okay.
That had background in the industry. And that was tricky because a lot of fitness instructors that are good have a lot of things thrown at them, a lot of opportunities. And it's hard to be patient and wait on something to start when there's something that's already existing that they're offering me something and I can go. So that happened a lot. There was a lot of turnover there. And it wasn't until I found my business partner, Reed, who was more like me, where he was a college athlete, really loved fitness, saw the potential in group fitness, had his own business that he had started online, like an e-com kind of business. And the more we chatted, because we had a mutual friend, and the mutual friend said, hey, you should meet this guy. He's got this idea for a business. You've started your own. Maybe he can bounce things off you.
Right.
He said, sure. So we'd meet up and grab a beer or two, and I'd chat through some of my assumptions and my thoughts and my plan, and made him sign an NDA, all that, thinking he just was trying to just be a sounding board and be helpful. And then eventually he said, I think this stuff all makes sense. I think you got something, and I'd like to partner up with you. And I said, okay, because we have different strengths.
Right.
He's got more of that e-com online tech background.
Okay.
I have more of the branding, marketing, kind of operations, people, more the big corporate kind of background to set structure in place to a degree, and I had also, and the product was my vision, right, and so it was a good mix, and he brought credibility to the table as a business owner already that I didn't necessarily have, and so the two of us, we were able to go and then start to pitch things. Okay. And this was a first time for him to pitch things because he had started his business on his own, and so we both learned a lot as far as real world pitching to investors versus what you see on TV and things like that.
Right.
And the process for us was really interesting and nerve-wracking. Right? You hit walls where you're like, this is never going to happen.
Really?
It's just never going to happen. Nobody's going to get it.
Did you think that would be did you just think you weren't going to get the money at one point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, at one point I didn't think I was going to find a partner that would even understand how long this was going to take and stick around. And then it was, nobody understands what we're trying to do, you know, like they just don't get it. And it was frustrating because...
Did you ever feel of like giving up and just...
Yes and no. I mean, for me, sure, it would have been easy to just say, it's too hard, it's just not going to happen. I don't, you know, I wasn't born into money, so, it's unfair. The world's unfair. I could have done that, but the other option was go back to the corporate world and be miserable every day. And I really didn't want to do that. And so for me, it was... Nope, however long this takes is however long this takes. Just keep strategizing, keep fighting, keep honing in, adding more detail, you know, learning from each one of these interactions.
Did you have anyone that was like, you mentioned a mentor before, did you have anyone that was sort of like just a positive influence on you through that time, or you just...
Honestly, it was Reed and I kind of in it together.
Right.
Because we both really believed that everything that we went over was accurate and real, and the potential was there. We really felt that way. We really did. You know, my mom and dad I am lucky in that respect. Very, very supportive. You know, they just kept saying, you know, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You know, timing's everything. The timing's just not right yet. It's going to happen. You just have to believe that. Ultimately, they were right, you know. Ultimately, they were right. And Dad didn't like, you know, that I didn't have more money saved. Dad didn't like that I was cashing out my 401k to live on, you know, for when we opened. But I was like, I don't have a family, you know, I don't have anyone that I'm going to affect if things don't work. It's all on me, so I can bet on me. I can take risk on me. No one else is going to feel that risk. So I was okay with it, right? He still disagreed, but that's okay. I get it, you know. But yeah, it was just us, just fighting it out.
How many people do you have to go through then to you sort of...
I didn't have a huge network of folks with extra pocket cash, right? We tapped into everything we could without crossing lines, you know, socially. But I mean, we're talking, you know, 30 plus people, easy. Some you get to pitch to, some you don't. Yeah. And ultimately we ended up having one that expressed interest, what seemed like serious interest, and they were busy and kind of in and out of town, and we had finally found a property, this one, that was zoned for our use, so we weren't going to have to deal with rezoning. It fit our budget, and was in a location that had parking and was where we wanted to be, and so it was kind of one of those, it's very hard to find these properties, and they're not building anything new like this around town, and I felt we had to move. I felt we had to get this one. Right. And that particular investor was like, well, I'm not putting money in until you do. And we said, okay, that's fair. We thought we'd all go in together at the same time, but fine. So I remember basically having everything and putting it down on this property and everything I had, and securing it was fun and nerve-wracking at the same time. I've never written a check that big, right? And you're signing your life away to a degree on a lease, and but it made it real. And so then we go back to the investor, and they're like, yeah, I've been thinking about things. I want the terms to change. I actually want this and that, and it wasn't what we had discussed. And so I had a decision to make at that point of, do I go with the cash, but give up control of the business, and let them essentially kind of put their thumbprint on this, just for the sake of, wow, we're on the hook for a lease now, and we got to get this thing going, because if we don't get going, it takes a while to get open, and we can't miss, Q1 of the year. And it just didn't sit right. It didn't feel right. It really didn't. And it was a struggle. And I asked Reed, and he was like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it either, right? He didn't have a good feeling about it either. And he was like, but practically, we need the cash.
Yeah.
So what do we do? It was tough. So there was a decision point there after a week or two where I had to say, you know what? No, that's not what we talked about. I don't know that you understand what we're really doing here, so I can't let you take control of things, right? Because then it'll morph this into something else that I've put countless, years of work into, essentially, and so I couldn't. So that was stressful.
And I guess I suppose the position then you were then in was you'd now signed a lease and you haven't got anyone to invest in.
Yeah, exactly. We have no money in the bank, and we're gonna have payments that are gonna start to hit, right? And we got to do a build out and all this stuff. And
did that give you a few sleepless nights?
It was a little bit. It was a little sleepless. It was a little sleepless. So then it's like, how do we sublease out the space to someone for maybe just storage while we're trying to raise money? Like, you start to go into plan B, C, D, E, and then you have to do that as an entrepreneur. You've got to be able to shift and pivot as circumstances arise, and think about, what's my path here in this moment to get me from here to here. You just do sometimes.
Right, yeah.
And so we started to do that. I randomly came up to LA with friends to grab some dinner, posted a picture on social media that I was in downtown, had a buddy that I used to work with, saw, and was like, oh, hey, wish I'd known you were in downtown, would have invited you to my brewery. And I noticed the words "my brewery," and I was like, oh, which one? And he was like, Boomtown, which is our neighbor, right? And I was like, when you say "my," do you work there? And he's like, oh, I have a little ownership stake in it. And I said, oh, okay. I was like, let's chat, And so I told him, I said, could you introduce me to the Boomtown owners, because I released out the space next door, and he and I hadn't talked in years. And he was like, wait, why? What did you lease the space out for? And so we started to talk, and he was like, do you have your pitch deck? And I was like, I do. Always have your pitch deck. And so we went through it, and he was like, I might be interested in investing in this, and I might know a couple people. And they kind of broke the seal, and then once they had invested, others would. And so it worked out.
Wow.
But there was definitely a time period of panic.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story.
Yeah. Not the norm.
No. Thinking about that before you went into it, would you still do it again?
I would. You don't know what you don't know.
No.
Right? And so a lot of that stuff, and a lot of really the major stress points were finding people to partner with, and then raising the money. Going back, I would have probably focused a little bit. I wouldn't have been as shy. I wouldn't have been as timid on reaching out to more people for investment, frankly.
Right.
You know, I was a little bit more shy. I was a little bit more timid because I didn't really know how to pitch it yet. I didn't really know what do investors actually care about. Who should I be talking to? And frankly, I talked to older folks with money, and they didn't understand.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't until I started to talk to what I'll call more peers that were under the age of 40, who just happened to have extra cash on the side from successful careers or a real estate sale or whatever it was. They understood this.
Yeah.
They understood the business.
Yeah.
And so you have to go find investors that understand what you're doing, not just people who have cash.
Right.
And so I think if I could do it differently, I would do it differently that way.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it differently because I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I have a story now.
Yeah.
And that story can have an impact, right? Story matters.
Yeah.
If it's easy, no one can relate.
No.
They just can't. So easy stories don't give people hope. They
No.
don't give people motivation. Struggle does, right? And so struggle was necessary. And frankly, a workout's a struggle, and you get stronger through the struggle, right? So
Yeah.
it can all tie together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I guess what's your sort of view on luck in business then?
Luck is always around. It's whether you see it, whether you've prepared for it, whether you're a person of action, and you can strategize around that particular lucky opportunity, right? Because sometimes it can fall in your lap and you don't have to do much for it, but a lot of times it's in front of you, but you got to find a way to go capture it.
Right.
Right? And ultimately that's kind of where perseverance comes into play. I think having strategy, the ability to pivot, and then just persevering through things just through sheer will allows you to take advantage of lucky situations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you're prepared really for when it comes to you.
Right.
So bringing us to the present day then. So tell us what you've got going on here then. So where are you now? Are you sort of where you felt you wanted to be at this moment in time, or?
Yes and no. I have very high, I guess, standards and goals.
Right.
About what we offer, how we offer it, what our revenue should look like, what our membership should look like, things like that. How should we be operating? Probably unrealistic, frankly, to a degree, right? Now, all my financial projections and models are based on more of worst case kind of scenarios.
Okay.
But all of my actual goals and like the way we should be doing things are based on more of my unrealistic expectations.
So where are you now then in between?
We're in between. So
You're in
I would
between.
say
I guess that's good then.
it's good. No,
Yeah.
it is. It is good. We're in between, and that's healthy.
Yeah.
And it's comfortable to be in between, right? And from what I'm told by my instructors who've got industry experience, as well as outsiders and folks that are from the industry but hear about us and we chat, they say that our growth has been much more above average than I might want to give it credit for.
Right.
And so it's nice to get those data points from outside the walls.
Yeah.
To know, like, oh, we are doing well. Oh, we are above average. That's cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't know any different. I'm not necessarily from the industry background, and so these are my first data points to measure off of, right?
Yeah.
These are my foundations, not necessarily what I've experienced in the past.
Yeah. And how do you then, because it is particularly Los Angeles, it's a very competitive market. You've got all of the brands here or coming here.
Oh, they're coming. Oh yeah.
How do you sort of stay interesting, relevant, stand up above what's going on?
The big thing for us Obviously, the type of programming we do is different than other places.
Right. And just briefly talk through that.
Sure. So for us, our programming, it is more strength focused. So most HIIT classes are cardio focused, right? So you've got treadmills, heavy on treadmills, heavy on rowers, heavy on more body weight related exercises. But in here we've got weight. We actually do deadlifts, right? We'll do cleans, and we push weight in here and we encourage it. So we don't have treadmills. We bake a cardio element in just by keeping you moving and your heart rate's up, which we've had to educate a lot of folks that cardio doesn't mean that you're on a piece of equipment. Cardio is all about your heart rate. And so that's been fun, helping people realize you can strength train and have cardio baked into it. So that's some of our big difference. The layout of the space, the amount of room, the different types of exercises that we can do because of that space and flexibility and the wonderful tools that you guys, obviously make, allows us to be different than what people experience at other places.
Right.
But ultimately, the big deal is the authenticity. We are not a chain. We don't feel like a chain. And you can tell, right? When you walk into more of a chain, big national corporate business, there's just a different air about it versus what is the feeling of more of a small neighborhood studio.
Right.
Now, I'm confident that we can replicate this feeling in other places.
Right.
Because I kind of know, what makes that feeling happen in a place. Not that I'm going to share all that with everybody, but it is something we can replicate, and we will.
And is that the plan?
It is the plan.
To have more of these.
It's absolutely the plan. We're going to do one of these. The plan right now is another one next year.
Right. Are you staying around LA?
We'll stay around.
Yeah.
My goal is to end up with far enough away that it doesn't necessarily cannibalize, but close enough that people who might live in the middle, or or maybe they work close to us but they live closer to the other one, it makes it a no-brainer for them to become a member and join.
Right.
So yeah, that's the goal.
And what do you think are some of the challenges for you to expand to the level that you want to? What do you want to expand? Just a couple, or?
Hit me up if you want to talk about franchise, but yeah, for me, I definitely want to have multiple.
Right.
My thought process is, if 5 years from now, I'd like to have probably about 10 of these guys, maybe more. Very carefully chosen markets. Neighborhoods matter, and that's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
But the biggest challenge really is going to be people, right? Like, we have the programming, we know what equipment to use, we have the tech systems set up at this point. There's still a lot to learn, don't get me wrong, but we know enough to be dangerous and operate one of these guys profitably. But people, right? How do you get and find people that fit the culture, that understand what this is really about, which allows it to have that neighborhood feel, not the corporate feel, and how do you train them up? How do you make sure that they are at the caliber of customer service that you need, and frankly also teaching the classes the way you need them taught, things like that. The people element is going to be the toughest part at the end of the day, which I think most businesses will tell you. That is the toughest part.
And how much time is that a job that you spend your time doing, getting the people part of it right, or do you have someone?
I'm very picky about who we hire.
Right.
My interview process was probably a little different than most. Whenever we opened, I would either seek you out because I'd been following you for a while and you didn't know it, or you were a reference from someone that I knew.
Right.
And we were going to grab coffee and chat for an hour and a half. I wasn't even going to ask you about fitness.
What are you looking for in those when you're having coffee with them?
Genuine feeling, warmth, the ability to smile, laugh, be okay with conversating with someone you don't know, right? Because that's what you're going to do as an instructor. And so for me, those were important elements. And then after, it was what's your background? What got you into fitness? Why do you enjoy it? What else do you do with your life? Things like that. What are your other hobbies and interests? So those were the types of things we talked through. And I wanted to know if they were going to ask me questions about the business. Are they genuinely interested in what we do and what we offer and why we're different, right? If they just saw this as another gig and another job, then, maybe if you're really good.
Yeah.
But those that actually showed a genuine interest, that made it a bigger impression. Then it was, okay, I want to come take your class. Right? And then it was, do they teach a good class? Do they catch when people are doing things improperly, stuff like that? What's their presence like in the room? Things like that. So yeah, an instructor side. And then on even the front desk side, same thing. We're going to meet, we're going to chat, right? And then I'm going to put you into mock scenarios on day one. I want to see how you respond, right? I'm going to play the customer you're going to be. And you don't know anything at this point because it's your first little interview, but how are you going to respond when I ask you certain questions? What are you going to say? Right? And that way I can see how you react. Are you good at ad-libbing? Are you good at making something up on the spot? Or do you freeze? You need people that can not necessarily show that they're sweating and they don't know the answer. So yeah.
And we mentioned earlier about the sort of trend for people to be bringing in more actor type of people in this type of model. What's your views on that then?
Yeah, so I'm not from the industry and I don't want to make enemies, but my thought process is this. We're supposed to be fitness first, right? If we're fitness first, then proper form, knowing how to teach exercises, knowing how to identify when people aren't doing things right needs to be number one. The entertainment aspect and putting on a show absolutely helps to fill classes. Don't get me wrong. But it doesn't necessarily give people results if that's more of your focus, is a pretty face that can be fun on the mic and put on a good show, right? If that's all you need and that's all you want, I get it from a business standpoint because then your revenues are good, you're filling classes, your utilization is up, etc. But are you really teaching these people how to do things right where they can then get stronger over time? Are you walking around and really challenging them? Do you know them personally enough that you can say you've been doing that particular exercise with a 15-pound weight, it's time for you to step up to a 20? Or are you more worried about yourself and being on stage and the show that you're putting on? And I'm not a big fan of that being the only thing, where you pluck someone who has no fitness background, but they're pretty and they're in shape, and you train them for 6 weeks, and they go to a script, and they teach a script, right? And they're great on mic, and they're pretty, and they smile, and they can take pictures with everybody and all that. That's great, but is that what this is supposed to be about? Is this industry supposed to be about that? I don't think it is. I think it's supposed to be a blend of the two. I think the entertainment aspect and the experience aspect is absolutely 100% important. But it's like peanut butter and jelly. You can't forget about, the other piece to it, or it's not a whole sandwich, right? So
for your brand, as we were talking, that's probably part of the challenge, and is getting those people which have got both sides.
Oh yeah, I mean we've brought plenty of people in to audition. Plenty of people that are at brand name places, and they're curious to come try us out and work for us, and they get in here and they may have the technical knowledge, but they struggle with 30 people in a room, and they struggle with managing a lot of folks, and they struggle with being on mic and having presence, being able to go off mic real quick, make a comment with someone, and then get back on mic. Like the timing of things, they struggle. Or the opposite. They are great on the mic. They have great personality. They're fun. They're bubbly. But oh my gosh, everyone in that station is doing deadlifts horribly wrong. And then the next station, the next group comes in to do deadlifts, and they're doing it horribly wrong, and you haven't corrected any of them. They're all going to hurt their backs. They're never going to come back because, I can't do that exercise. I can't work out that intensely. I can't do that. I'm not strong enough, or I got hurt. And really, it's no, we didn't do our job. We did not teach you how to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's on us.
Yeah. And you talk about the repeat, getting people back in. What do you do to, or what have you done to build your brand in terms of, is it just word of mouth? Is it, is there been something specific from a marketing perspective that's been successful?
Yeah.
Or a combination of different things?
Social media is huge. At the end of the day, Facebook, Instagram, the easiest way to try to show people who you are and what you do, right? With videos, pictures of your space, things like that. For us, it was refer a friend for free is big, right? Bring a friend in, they can take a class for free. And then it was, okay, if your friend becomes a member, then you get a credit, right? So then they kind of became ambassadors, right? But ultimately, it's, you got to talk to people. You've got to find a way to, once they do come and check you out, catch them after class in a non-intimidating way. Try to make a connection, explain to them what you do, why it's good for them, ask them what they currently do and what they're looking for, right? And they'll be honest. People will tell you, you know what, I'm actually happy over here. I just figured I would check this out. I heard about it, but I like where I'm at. Okay, that's cool. Well, we're here if you ever want to try us out again. Or it's, I've never done anything like this before. I know nothing about this. Can you tell me why should I do this? Why shouldn't I just go for a jog all the time? Right? So then that gives you the opportunity to tell them why this is valuable.
Yeah.
But if you don't go and ask them, if you just let them walk out the door, again, you have to do it in a way that's not intimidating. They can't feel like you're sales pitching them.
Right.
They have to feel like you're just asking them genuine questions of, what do you do for your fitness routine? How did you find out about us? What made you curious to come check it out? Do you have any questions? And if they do, that gives you the ability to start a conversation.
Right. So. And is that the role of you as the CEO, or
it's been my role, and I'm realizing at this point that I need to train some others to be able to do that as well.
Yeah.
So that I can spread my time elsewhere.
Right.
But yeah, when you first open, you absolutely need to be able to communicate to people the value of your place.
Yeah.
So you do need to be there, and be a little hands-on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So finally then, you mentioned about you needing to get other people and moving on. What's the future for Zach? Where do you want to see yourself 5 to 10 years?
Oh man. For me, I guess we'll go 2-3 years, right? 2 or 3 years from now, I'd like for us to have 5 of these guys open. I think the impact of what we do, because interestingly, if you check out who our membership base is, it ranges in age from 18 to 60.
Right.
Actually.
Really?
And it's men, it's women, it's different ethnicities, it's different fitness levels, it's different fitness backgrounds, it's different income levels. It's been all over, which is awesome. My personal goal is that we get more of these open to create a larger, broader community of folks that can go from facility to facility depending on where they're at around the city.
Right.
Meet more people, have their lives impacted, stay on their routine, right? Not lose their routine just because maybe they took a job that's a little further away than our facility. Maybe there's another one over that way, so they don't lose it, and keep that impact on their life. So if we can expand what we're doing and helping to change people's mindset about how strong they really are. And that's my goal for the business, 100%. And then I guess for me personally, just making an impact on my staff's lives, being able to offer them more, maybe more continuing education for fitness related stuff as our budget would grow into that. And then maybe being able to help create an impact in the fitness industry in general, to remember that there's a lot of people that still don't do this, that they don't work out, they're not fit, and it's because it's intimidating and they feel like it's not for them. So how do you create a sanctuary for them, right? There's a reason it's called sanctuary, because we want to give people the idea that it is a safe place.
Right.
You can come in here regardless of your background. And so how do we spread that message, right? Because that is good for everybody.
Yeah.
If more people realize they can get fit, they can get stronger. So my best piece of advice
You've ever been given?
that I've ever been given from a business standpoint is learning how to communicate with people of various backgrounds, right? Sometimes you say things that doesn't mean they get it. You have to make sure people understand what you're trying to communicate, not just say. And it needs to be timely. So you have to keep in mind when you're saying something and how someone is ready to receive it or not. And then how did you say it, right? So one of the big rules is don't hit send immediately.
Right. Oh yeah, I remember that actually from Kevin's notes.
Yeah, don't hit send immediately. if you've got something that you're trying to say, think about it for a second. Just keep it kind of on pause for 10 or 15 minutes. Come back and reread it and then send it.
Yeah.
Right? You
That's a
might
good
change
point.
a word. You might not realize, but there's a word that might trigger a different reaction than what you were hoping for.
Right, yeah.
Because you just fired it off.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're busy and you got stuff going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, wait before you hit send, and that ties into communication, knowing how to communicate with different people, different backgrounds, you know, and most things can be solved with a smile, right? Especially customer service.
Yeah.
Put on a smile, put on a good face, make sure that people feel that you care about them, and so even if they're unreasonable with their request or they're coming at you angry, you know, you still smile, you still say, I understand, here's why we do this, or here's what's going on, or here's how I can help. So yeah, wait before you hit send. Make sure you can communicate well with different people, different backgrounds, know the timing of your communication, and then smile.
Yeah.
You know, it can go a long way.
I like the email one. My dad always says, like, just sleep on it, you know, put it overnight, particularly if it's a sensitive one, because sometimes you've got a lot of emotion in it and you, like you say, you just want to get it out. You read it the next day and you sort of change the emphasis on it quite a bit. Same message, but put over in a slightly different way.
Exactly.
Can be good. And what advice would you give for someone who's thinking about, you know, doing what you did, you know, on a similar journey to what you did?
You need to understand that it's a business, right? The classes are great, teaching is great, the people connection is great. It's a must. Like, that's just, it has to be there. That's a prerequisite. Like, you have to be able to have those things and do those things. But you need to understand it's a business. And so my best piece of advice is find a business partner that you can bounce things off of, to make sure that your ideas are not lacking, to make sure there's no hole in what you're thinking about doing. Make sure you've got a business partner that you can let them take some things and do some things that they're stronger at than you are. And, you know, it just is a much better approach if you've got a business partner and you both understand this is a business. So you might be more on that product side where you're the face of the programming and the classes and all that, but there's another half to this. And so that's my biggest piece of advice is don't take for granted that you need a partner, you can't do it alone, and that you guys need to realize that it is a business, and you've got to treat it as such behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, great, excellent, good advice.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, what a great business. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good luck.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.